And welcome to this webinar by EFFPA, the European Former Foodstuff Processors Association. I'm Anton Brink, I'm the Executive Director of EFFPA. I will be moderator of today's webinar. Today's webinar is part of EFFPA's ambition to raise awareness about former foodstuff processing, which we believe represents a circular economy solution in a sustainable food system, allowing to prevent food waste and reduce the environmental impact of livestock production. We'd also like to place this webinar in the context of the EU Food Waste Platform subgroup on action and implementation, to which EFFPA is a co-chair this year. Former foodstuff processing sector is well established today in numerous European countries, but we believe there is potential for more. There's still a large range of food manufacturers and food retailers who perceive barriers to becoming a supplier of former foodstuffs. We won't be able to address all obstacles today, but today we can at least in this hour present some basics of the key points of attention for food manufacturers and retailers when considering to make former foodstuffs available for feed for food producing animals. Today is about what goes on in the supply chain of former foodstuffs. They are sourced from food manufacturers and retailers, you will understand. What is important though for these individual operators? At national level, there can sometimes be a different approach to the way the transition of food into feed takes place, how is this regulated, but overall feed safety requirements apply across the board. Today is also about fostering collaboration. EFFPA is therefore very pleased that we have speakers today from AIBI, that's the International Association of Plant Bakeries, EuroCommerce, the European Association for Retail and Wholesale, and GMP Plus International, a feed safety assurance scheme. Before I will hand over to the first speaker, we would like to show you a short introduction video about the basics around former foodstuff processing to adequately set the scene.
We should be working towards a circular bio-based economy with an increased use of alternative animal feed materials and more sustainable carbon-efficient livestock production. Food manufacturers always consider donations to food banks for food that is not placed on the market. But in the production of some food items, a small percentage end up being no longer suitable because it is broken, misshaped, incorrectly flavored, or just unfinished. But it is still suitable as animal feed for food-producing animals. In line with the food recovery hierarchy, the animal feed outlet prevents food waste from occurring. These so-called former foodstuffs are collected and transported to a processing facility where they are mixed, blended and dried, if necessary, with any packaging material removed. Controls are performed to ensure the feed safety and quality standards of the processed former foodstuffs are met. Pigs, cows and chickens are very happy to receive feed containing former foodstuffs because it's very tasty. Plus, it's an excellent energy source due to the high-quality sugar, starch, oils, and fat content. Approximately 5 million tons of former foodstuffs are used as feed in Europe annually. This amount in cereal grains would require nearly 400,000 hectares of arable land and over 300 billion litres of water. Using former foodstuffs in feed increases feed sustainability and supports efficient food production and a low-carbon circular bio-based economy. For more information on how former foodstuff processors contribute to safe and sustainable food systems, please visit the EFFPA website.
Excellent. Hope you enjoyed that. Before I will hand over to the first speaker, I would like to highlight that at the end of his presentations, we have a Q&A sessions with all the participants, in fact. So you can use the chat system in Zoom to place your questions, and we will try to have answered as many questions as we can. And before anybody asks, yes, the slides and the recording of the webinar will be made available on the EFFPA website. I will introduce the first speaker. It will be Didier. Didier is Secretary General of AIBI, International Association of Large Bakers. He has a scientific and regulatory background with many years of professional experience in European and international food and feed chain associations in Brussels and beyond, in particular in the field of feed additives and feed chain safety and hygiene management. His current responsibilities, which include one of the largest food processing sectors, combine ideally with with his feed experience within the context of the EFFPA webinar today on the valorization of food byproducts in feed. Didier, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anton. Good morning, everybody. I'm very pleased to be with you this morning. Sorry, I'm trying to share my screen. Here it is. Should be okay now. So good morning, everybody. Good morning, Anton, and thank you for the nice introduction. I have to say I'm very pleased to be with EFFPA this morning and with all of you to introduce what we do and the very positive partnership which is established between the bakery sector and the former foodstuff processors. So as Anton briefly introduced, I'm representing today the International Association of Plant Bakers. So we represent the large bakers in Europe. Large as quite a broad definition. Actually, we bring together companies having from 15 employees to a bakery group that rely on thousands of workers, in fact. And all members are manufacturing quite a wide range of bakery products, from bread, finished bread, but also all sorts of fine bakeries and intermediary product, being the so-called bake-off, so the products that are finished in the supply chain, cooked in the shops. We have seen that already, but also all sorts of frozen product. Altogether, our industry is producing about 35 million tons of bread and bakery product per year. And as mentioned, the bakery sector is one of the largest food transformation sector. We are amongst the big three with the meat and the dairy industry. Well, zero food waste is something that is very important and high in the strategy of our sector. You can see that from three levels, the general strategy. So of course, we have much attention and looks for the SDG 12. So the overall and joint objective to reduce food waste per capita by 15%. We are signatory of the EU Code of Responsible Food Business, but also all this translates very much into operational objectives. That's where it happens. It's actually in our plants, and the zero waste means something to our enterprises. There is a general philosophy at the center of what our people are doing there, which is to try to keep the product at the highest circularity value level as possible. And that's very important in what we do. So it's clearly not just a matter of discarding and getting rid of a number of things that are no longer of use in our industry, but to value that at the best as we can. An important aspect as well is the context of our production. And one should make a clear distinction between what happens and what we can do at the production and operational level. What happens then at the next step, I would call it distribution in general, so being the retail, but also restaurants and all sorts of direct distribution, and what happens at the consumer and household level. For today, in the present context, I'm focusing on the production, but obviously the two other steps are very important and often even more complex than the production level. When we look at the production level and we having this zero waste in mind, there is of course a root cause of what happens and what generates this waste. They are mainly driven by technical issues, a problem of or at least management of production and overproduction, and some quality defect. That's clearly a first line of action for our enterprises, is to minimize the generation of co-product and product which at the end are not finishing at the level of consumer and food consumer. The picture today is that there is no public statistic available on bread overproduction. It's obviously very different according to region, companies, type of operation, and so on. To give you a kind of order of magnitude, you can estimate that approximately 8% of the bakery production ends up in so-called food waste. So on the basis of the overall production that I mentioned, we are talking about something a little bit below 300,000 tons of bakery co-product per year. When we look at the fate of this co-product, a small part goes to food, bank donations. So we speak here about 1% of the overproduction. Another part goes to food reused. You can figure out, for instance, crumbs and things like this. We speak there about 3% of the co-product. The bulk of it, so about 3/4 of the food waste, goes to animal feed, and we have a part that goes to biofuel, biogas by about 20%. And a small last part that goes to other applications, fermentation, things like this, like reuse in beer or in some fermentation process. Again, about 1% of the total volume. It's noteworthy that practically nothing goes to the bins. You see that the evaluation of the incineration amounts is below 0.1% of the total food waste generated. So if we look a little bit at the hierarchy of waste management, here I took here the Moorman later, but well, there are different ways to express that. Obviously, the first line is prevention. I mentioned that. That's what we and what our company does within their sustainability strategy from an operational point of view, to minimize, to optimize flows, to optimize production, to reduce defect and so on and so forth. Of course, that's the first line of action. The second line of action is the use of inhuman food. As you understand, volume-wise, it's still relatively limited. There is possibility to increase, but you all know the complexity from a time management and logistic contingencies for this kind of things. But it's clearly high in the agenda for our industry. Then a part is convert to human food. So I mentioned the crumbs and things like this. Honestly, the demand limitation are probably the reason why it's not more there. We are always open, but of course, obviously, we are not going to overflow Europe and the market with crumbs that the market is not looking for. And the next step, very high still in the hierarchy of use of the food waste, is the animal feed, where we have approximately 75% of our residue going. This is very suitable both for the nature of the product and its nutritional value, but also from the point of the established path between our sector and the animal feed sector, directly or through the former foodstuff product processors. A small part in the kind of newer materials for industry. This is clearly in progress. That depends heavily on research and development. Things are going on there, and we can anticipate some movement and development there. Obviously, not up to the point that it will replace the bulk of the animal feed use. There is a part, as I mentioned, that goes to sustainable energy. So principally biogas and fermentation. We speak here mainly about composite products that are unsuitable for feed. So you might appreciate that in bakery there are things that are relatively pure on the brackets, or bread, things like this. There are products which are containing creams, chocolates, things like this. This is sometimes more difficult to valorize that in the feed, and this kind of product more likely go to revalorization of their energy. As I mentioned, the final disposal, so whether it's burning as waste or even dumping, is practically nil in the picture of the valorization of the co-product. Well, in this nice picture, we have also a surrounding context, and I want to mention also some regulatory interferences. So there is this good partnership and acknowledgement of the importance of doing well between our sector and the feed sector. Sometimes, in particular, the Renewable Energy Directive comes a little bit disturbing this nice picture. Of course, this directive is based on a completely fair focus on the need to generate energy, but we all know that it's stumbling a little bit on competitive use of feedstocks, and some of some silo competencies between sometimes certain directorate of the Commission. We know that the first stumbling block, so the necessary prominence of food, was identified already years ago, and so this move towards second generation biofuel, second generation that are identified and flagged as the result of assessment. What we have noticed, at least in our case, is that the content and the deepness of the assessment was a little bit questionable, both from the volume point of view and from the impact. They estimate approximately 19 million tons of waste available, which is completely unrealistic, and also some lack of perception of the impact that it would have to divert part of the waste from today the feed to other type of to the biofuel. So the result of that is that we had to ask to DG Energy to withdraw our bakery waste from their last Annex 9 delegate proposal. It was still a draft. We still don't know whether they will follow this request and this recommendation, but we hope so. We don't think that bakery should be considered as a main feedstock for biofuel. As you understood, we of course do not exclude the use of that, but that should not be a mainstream. The mainstream for us is clearly the animal feed. So in this nice picture and this nice partnership, we can wonder why it works so well. Probably, well, the core element of that is the nutritional value and the suitability of the nutritional element contained in our product. There is a long-lasting established logistic, and that's a very important aspect between our sector and the feed sector. The interface is also well managed between the food level and the feed one, and I come back to that on the hygiene of the product. What we do is obviously at a high level of sustainability and circularity, which is supported by economic viability, both for the bakers and for the feed industry, and which is hopefully accompanied by a relatively low processing, which further add to the balance and the viability of the model. There is one aspect which I wanted to finish on, which is very important also, and which probably derives from this strong partnership, is the management of the hygiene of the product. We know it's often a delicate aspect for the switch from product from the food sector to the feed sector, because, well, somehow people need to care for the hygiene of the product, which is sometimes difficult. You get out of the hygiene management of your food sector and you need to enter another one. The partnership facilitates that, allows to better establish the responsibility and for people to understand each other, so to realize that indeed this product is not a waste, it's really a co-product and it deserves to have the necessary regards and attention, and that's clearly what happens. It can happen operator by operator, but we have also examples where it's managed from a more structural point of view. So we have in some of our federation hygiene code for the management of the product, and if we take the example of the Dutch Federation, so NVB, this code also includes a module for the management of the co-product towards the feed sector. So just to say that the partnership offers the possibility for more fair and open and efficient ways to manage the hygiene and to manage this interface between the food and the feed sector. So in a nutshell, that's who we are, that's what we do, and I was very happy to contribute to this kind of testimony of this success story between the bakery sector and the feed sector. And so thank you again for the initiative of sharing that with a wider audience. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Didier. I think a very interesting presentation. In the rest of time, I will move on straight to the next presentation, because the time is flying. Els Bedert will be speaking to us. Els Bedert is Director of Product and Policy Sustainability at EuroCommerce, the European voice for retail and wholesale, which she joined in 2012. In the current role, she is leading EuroCommerce activities in a wide range of policies aimed at improving product safety, sustainability, quality, and integrity for food and non-food products, as well as on information to consumers. Els currently coordinates activities on the farm to fork and climate strategies within EuroCommerce, and has been closely involved in the development of the Code of Conduct on Responsible Food Business and Marketing Practices. I believe we will be sharing Els's presentation from our side. So I trust that slides are being put on the screen. Els, are you there with us?
Yes, I am.
Handing over to you.
Do I switch on my camera or?
Yes, please. Yes. People will be pleased to see you. There you go. Take it away.
Yes, thank you very much, Anton. Thank you for the introduction and thank you for inviting me to this exchange. Maybe the next slide. For those of people on the call who do not know EuroCommerce, we are the principal European Association Retail and Wholesale. We're one of the biggest economic sectors as well. 1 in 4 businesses, 1 in 7 jobs are actually in retail and wholesale, and 10% of the GDP. So I think something to really be reckoned with. And I've also put some of our company members on the slide here, and I'm sure a lot of the names actually ring a bell with the people on the call because they're well-established household names. And in addition to those companies, we have, of course, also national associations. Next slide, please. What I can say is that, of course, retail and wholesale have a very long-standing commitment to sustainability. And we are also in quite a privileged position because we can deal both with the producers, with the production side, and also with the consumption side. So we really feel that we really have a role to play here in anything related to sustainability, but of course also in that aspect in food waste. And it's really a critical priority based both from an environmental, social, but also from a business point of view. Economically, it doesn't make sense, food waste, for nobody. And I think we all know the saying: if food waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of CO2 emissions. So in the whole climate change actions and strategies, this is also an important role. And this has translated already since quite some years in some very strong commitments by our sector, by our members. We, for example, here on the slide, you see some of these actions. They're definitely not complete. There's just some actions that I wanted to highlight here. And also for those of you that want to know more about what our members are doing, we have on our website some best practices where you can find several examples from among our membership. What was already mentioned, we also have, of course, members have committed under the code of conduct on food waste specifically. We are, as EuroCommerce, are a member of the food waste platform, and we've also contributed to recommendations and their larger global initiatives, such as the Champions 12.3, where also the bigger retailers are part of. The next slide, please. And I think this has already resulted in quite some good figures, if you may say, because we really want to reduce much further. But the latest Eurostat statistics show that actually we are the best performing sector, let's say, with 7% of food waste in our sector. But that doesn't mean at all that we want to stop. I mean, there's lots to do, and we all are still contributing to the SDG. But I think this is a clear signal that this is not something new. This is very critically important for our members, and some results have been made. Next slide, please. This picture of the hierarchy, I think, will come back in every presentation, but of course for us as well. I mean, still prevention is the most important focus of the sector. But where that doesn't work, of course, there are these other actions that can take place, and there indeed we also see on the animal feed, which we talk about today. But really to avoid any landfill or incineration, that is really, I think, the common goal in the sector. And this actually translates, as was also said by Didier, it's really you have the big commitments. But of course, the most important is what do you actually do in practice at the business, at the shop floor, at the business level. So I'm going to give you a very few examples of this. Next slide, please. As you know, we as retailers, as I mentioned before, we can work with the suppliers. So we work very much on forecasting, on sourcing, on predicting sales. And this is something where there's continuous innovation and also continuous work with the suppliers to make sure that the right products arrive in the store at the right time. And this is a critical action of the retail sector. Secondly, at the shop itself, we really try, many of our members have actually dedicated sections where products that are reaching their expiry date can be sold at reduced prices. So also just to make sure that they are still being used in time. Other ways are to have, these are parallel foodstuffs or parallel food streams where different food products are being manufactured or produced from expired foods. A very big part of it is also for us, of course, as retailers, is about informing consumers. It's about what is a use by sell by date, what they actually mean. So they're actually more aware of the need to prevent food waste and our joint role in this. Next slide, please. Specifically working on focusing on animal feed. I did a quick roundup within our members. I don't have any strong statistics. But it's clear that there are different ways in which our members actually make sure that these former food products can actually end up with or also be used for feed when they are not used for human consumption anymore. Here you can see also the donation part, which is also an action that is very important for the sector, where it goes to food banks. And this is still also one of the more important actions by the sector. But of course, there are opportunities also for food waste, and we are hearing that today. And I think I must say that what I'm getting back from members is often the word sort of is very complex. And I also heard it from Anton in the introduction. There's different approach at national level. You need different certification or approvals. It's not so clear when it can be used for animal feed. So there's still opportunities there to sort of reduce these legal barriers or practical barriers actually to do it to that, because indeed, as I was mentioned, we need to prevent it from actually ending up in landfill. That's really an absolute no-go. So most of our members actually do have work streams as well here, either with former food processors or directly to the farm. Or there's also new innovations, for example, on insect farming, which I think you can also consider animal feed, or even with the zoos. So really, this is one of the actions that can be part of fighting food waste or preventing food waste from ending in landfill. And next slide. So I'm going to be quite clear because I can talk about this for very long. But I think what is important is that, as closing remark, is that it is a continued, very important aspect for the retail and wholesale, and hence important also for us to know what more can be done and to share knowledge, including in this webinar, what can be done maybe for the animal feed use. We continue to have, of course, a very important role towards consumers, who are now still seen as one of the biggest where food waste is happening. And there's a lot of things happening on innovation, and I think especially also in the feed sector, but also in preventing alternative or preparing alternative food products, or in sourcing. This is really, food waste is really an area where there's lots of things moving still, innovation startups where we're also part of. But we do need to have more knowledge as a retail sector, especially of the topic of today, and also to really make sure that any legal barriers are addressed and that we have more clarity for any definitions and reducing the administrative burden to allow food to go for feed use. Let me stop here. I'm happy to answer any questions later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Els. Very insightful to hear from a retailer. Usually think in the area of being an end customer, and now being a supplier to former Foodstuffs. We need to move on with the program. Valentina, I hope you are ready. So I'm going to introduce Valentina Massa, EFFPA president since October 2020, managing director at Dalma Mangimi, which is a family-owned former food processor in Italy, which is the largest in the country there. He's been involved in the company since 2004 after obtaining a degree in public relations at the IULM University in Milan. In her capacity, she's responsible for a large range of activities. She also represents EFFPA in a number of committees and platforms, such as the FIFAC Animal Nutrition, FIFAC Sustainability Committees, the EU Food Waste Platform. National level, she is involved in the board of Asalso, which is the Italian Compound Feed Manufacturers Association, and she's closely engaged with the Italian Food Manufacturers Association, Federalimentare. Valentina, can you manage to share your slides?
Good morning, everyone. I want to thank you, Anton, and especially thanks for Didier and Els for the very nice presentation. I'm trying to share my presentation. Okay, I should be able now. Please tell me if you can see it.
Yes. Yeah. Looks
okay.
Perfect.
Great.
Go ahead.
So I know we are in short time, so I will go as quick as I can. Maybe too quick. I will resume the first slide. EFFPA have been founded in 20. Apologies. There's some. No. Wait. I will try again. Okay. No, okay. We skipped the two first slide. Maybe it's for the timing, but okay. EFFPA is the European Formal Food Processor Association. Represent the Formal Food Processor Association settled mostly in Europe. We have national association like VIDO in the Netherlands, UK EFFPA in the UK. We have BFN in Germany. Then we have the representation of Italy, Dalma, Promic in Spain, Trotec in Belgium. And we have also several members coming from Greece. We have Nuevo, we have Scaptrans from Denmark, we have Valoria from France, we have Jungo from Poland, and we have also two associate members coming from Canada and the US. We are based in the FEFAC and managed by FEFAC Secretariat. And we are really happy today to talk about this topic. We start on the definition, else before talk about different application and different definition. Also Didier talk about co-products. Now today we are talking about formal foodstuff that is defined in Regulation 68 2013 that exclude the catering reflux, but include all the co-products, but also the finished products that were intended for human consumption and that are no longer intended for this destination, but they are not affecting animal or human health. The sourcing now are from, as you see, the food manufacturing, the retail sector, and also the grocery retail. We are excluding for food and feed safety all the catering, as already said, and agriculture, just because agriculture deliver crops and vegetal byproducts. Examples of the presentation of today is the typical form of foodstuff. We have here some cases, so the production of bread, biscuits, chocolates, crisps, candy, pasta, breakfast cereals. We are not today talking about the product containing meat, fish, and gelatin that can be used for specific destination. And the products we already talk about, like biscuits, bread, etc., that contain milk, eggs, honey, rendered fats, collagen, and gelatin, can be used in our production. But I want to go a little bit more in detail, because the ABP legislation help with exemption from waste legislation in several countries. But we have, I think, an interesting tips that should be noted. We had in 2013 a Regulation 294, where for food no longer destined for human consumption that contains all these ingredients that have been treated under Ghana processing as defined in Article 2 of Regulation 858, they can be placed on the market for feeding for farmed animals other than for animals without further treatment, provide that the material, of course, has not been in contact with other material that has a higher risk, hygiene risk. And all the precautions have been taken to prevent the contamination. So how can we together validate a safe process? I'm talking about together because it's really important, and we are working in a chain, and so we have to share responsibility to guarantee safety and traceability. So the first step is sharing responsibility and create an assessment on the risk and manage it in the best way. The second is the HACCP, so looking in every step of the process, since the purchasing, the storage, the transportation, the processing, in order to assess the risk and prevent. The third step is the efficient transformation, because most of the time these products needs to be undergone under some process, like the packing, like drying, and there are many others. And the first step is the correct labeling following regulation EC 767. About the regulation 183, as before we said, we have many different applications among member states. So there's not only one right reply, but this is legislation, so it can occur several times. The food business operators need to be registered as feed business operator, because they are incurring the feed chain, and even if their responsibility is limited in comparison to the feed compound producer or the former foodstuff processor, they should be registered. In which kind of product and risk we can encounter. As said before, we talk about bakery, pastry, confectionery products mostly, but we can have singular ingredients when receipts change, or they are after the best before dates. We can have intermediate products, that is, for example, dough or unbaked bread. We can have finished products, so baked bread, and finished product with the packaging. So every step needs a proper risk assessment, a proper management. In summarizing, more than 95% is of the material collected at the moment, because we are working mostly with food industry and less with the retail sector, is unfinished. Is an intermediate product. Sometimes we have some seasonal products that, as said before Didier, are exceeding the donation capacity. So after the sold, after, as said also by Els, with the promotional to sell to people a very low price and donation, maybe there can be more remaining products that could go wasted, and so it's good to divert into the feed chain. Then we have sometimes products removed from the market for commercial or labeling errors, like allergens, that are a safety issue for humans, less relevant for animal. But these products are never legally waste, and I will explain you better afterwards. And of course, we are never in competition with the food banks. The competition is with waste. Why we said these products are not waste? We are really happy there have been an amendment of Directive 98/2008 that is promoting a more circular economy and a reduction of the generation of waste. And since we had before the exclusion from the scope of animal byproducts, they add also the substances that are destined for use as feed materials defined in point G, Article 3, Regulation 767, that do not consist or contain any animal byproducts. So with these two letters, we can exclude from the waste general directive all the former foodstuff destined for feed use. And then we have a very relevant definition, that is a definition of food waste, that is means all food defined in Article 2 Regulation 178 that has become waste. And this is the reason why, as you see in the food waste hierarchy that we fully respect, we are in the reduction part. So since we are not become waste, we are in the reduction of the food waste. How happen the process? The process happen always with the four pillars: traceability, asset management, effective depacking or effective process like drying and any others, and continuous quality test. The final product is an ingredient of complete feed that is allowed, that is good for all livestock animals, and should be completed with the proper ingredients specified for the species. This is a typical form of foodstuff feed from the northern countries. You can see that generally the energy content is higher than the cereal crops. The main reason is the content of of oils and fats, and also the starches are cooked, so there are more energy available for animals. This is the general legal framework, but we have many more. And I want to go a little bit more in detail on the feed catalog, the Regulation 68/2013 that has been amended in 2022. This is really a pillar, a milestone for former foodstuff processors and also for the suppliers, so the food business operators intentioned to supply and reduce their food waste. First of all, you have in general part, part A, general provision, the definition of former foodstuff. So you have clearly the change of legal framework from the food legislation to the feed legislation. Afterwards, you will find in part B all the glossary of processes. Now we spotted the mechanical food packaging removal because it's one of the first thing that we receive as question, but it's packed. Can you use as feed? Yes, we can, because we have the process to depack. And third of all, you have in part C, the list of feed materials. That is a positive list, is an open list, but in particular in 13 category, you will find the most common product, like in this case, products from the bakery and pasta industry, but you will find many more in the catalog. What is really relevant, that you in the description, you find products obtained during and from the production. So you will have complete feed and also intermediate ingredient. Another topic that we often encounter is the best before. I know that for all the stakeholders that are part of the food waste stakeholder platform is a long story, but in common life, we always receive this question, but this product has passed the best before date. Is this allowed for animal feed? Of course, it's allowed also for a human being because it's not used by, that can be dangerous. But of course, it's really, really important how it is handled, because also a product that is not reach the best before date could be not safe anymore. Another point that is really important for us was the publication of the Commission notice, because has been a great achievement for the reduction of food losses in the feed chain. This is because, first of all, the Commission stated wanted to respect the food waste hierarchy. Of course, first of all, the reduction and the sourcing of food banks, so no competition, but absolutely great relevance into feed nutrition instead of waste management or biogas plants. One thing that is really important is that it is a Commission guidelines. It's not a changement of legislation, and so it is supposed to assist the national and local competent authorities and the operators in applying the relevant union legislation. So it will be subjected to the national and regional authorities. What we can summarize from this communication, really helpful, of course, the clarification on expiration dates and on the availability of food materials that have been fallen on the floor in the food industry. And of course, there will be more scenarios that we can find. What we can ask to the processor suppliers is to take responsibility as a feed manufacturer, if possible, to take the registration as feed business operator. Look at former foodstuff processor as a food chain partner and not a food waste recycler, and join our forces to seeking legal clarification and find a more unified application in legislation. We feel we have in the heart of the feed and food circular economy chain, and former foodstuff processor provide a sustainable solution in order to reach the target SDG 12.3 to reduce unavoidable food losses and support the production of feed ingredients that are more sustainable because need less natural resource in comparison to traditional crop ingredients. Of course, keeping always safety and traceability. This is an ambitious target, and it's a challenge. We know you care, and we can cooperate to move towards a more sustainable food system. Thank you for the attention.
Thank you very much, Valentina. I hope that will be very clarifying for many of you. Conscious of time again, we're going to move on to the next speaker. So next speaker is Jaap van der Kloet from GMP Plus International. So Jaap works as project coordinator at GMP Plus International, has over 11 years of experience in developing and improving GMP Plus feed certification scheme. He was involved in developing the purchase requirements of former Foodstuff. So Jaap, are you ready? I'm going to hand over.
I am.
You need to fill in your password, it seems.
All right.
Well protected.
Well protected.
There you go.
Here I go. Yes. Thank you. I realize the time we are in right now, so I will try to keep it shorter than I have scheduled. But first of all, thank you for thank you EFFPA, also Anton, for inviting GMP Plus International to this webinar. And I thank you also for the other speakers to share your thoughts and your ideas. I think it was very, very informative. My name is Jaap van der Kloet, and in this webinar I will share with you our perspective on guiding the industry and adding new values and purpose to former foodstuffs while meeting the feed safety demand from their customers. This morning, I will start by giving a brief introduction to GMP Plus International. Who are we and what do we do? And in the end, this will help in understanding the roles and responsibilities of food and feed companies in guaranteeing safe feed and safe food. Then I will furthermore spend some time on explaining about the understanding of feed safety, and I will do that from the perspective of the GMP Plus certified companies. And it can be helpful for food companies to start thinking as a feed business operator. And finally, I will make some conclusions on what food companies can do to add value to former foodstuffs. And this is interesting because in the end, the former foodstuffs that food companies deliver to feed producing companies will end up, of course, via the feed and the cows, chickens, and pigs on the plate of your customers in the form of cheese, meat, eggs, or milk. And of course, it will end up on your own plate and in your own cup. GMP Plus International. What drives us is that we believe that everyone in the world should have access to safe food. And it is actually therefore that every company in the animal feed chain should be committed to safe feed. And what do we do to make this vision come to life? We do this by deploying a certification scheme that facilitates companies to contribute to safe feed. And this means we facilitate companies to demonstrate that they deliver safe feed in the feed chain. And by implementing our standards, companies set up a feed safety management system that helps them to be in control. And later on, I will explain the key elements of our certification scheme that every GMP Plus certified company must implement to ensure feed safety. And also besides deploying a certification scheme, we gather and also share valuable information regarding feed safety assurance. And our support products and also the GMP Plus Academy play an important role here. And good to know that is also food companies have decided to become GMP+ certified to also to deliver their food products, former food products, into the feed chain. This is a world map. You see here we are an international feed certification scheme. More than 19,000 companies worldwide are certified, and 30 certification bodies check annually if companies comply with the requirements. I want to say here that certification here is on a voluntary basis, so there is no legal obligation to become certified. In the market, however, it is considered as a license to sell. We are one of the schemes that contribute to feed safety, and of course there are also others like QS, Overcome in Belgium, and ASC in the UK. This is the chain approach that we use. We deal with feed, so the scope of the certification scheme starts where feed is produced until the delivery of feed to the livestock farmer, and all links in the chain must be certified to guarantee the feed safety throughout the chain. Because after all, assuring feed safety and of course also food safety is a shared responsibility. It's not only the company that delivers feed to the livestock farmer that is responsible, all his suppliers and the supplier of his supplier have a responsibility. And because they do something with the feed, like processing, drying, storing, and warehouses, transporting from A to B. So this is what we call the chain approach. And actually former foodstuffs are an important part of this chain, and especially former foodstuffs demonstrate actually the interconnection between the food and the feed sector. Food is used as feed, and this feed is eaten by the cows, pigs, and chickens that provide us with meat, eggs, and milk that we eat and drink. So former foodstuffs actually make the circle round. And well, when talking about circles, the assurance of feed safety worldwide is a shared responsibility. GMP+ certified companies, certification bodies, food and feed chain partners, and GMP+ International all work together, and each one has their own responsibilities. And now I come to the next slide, at least I try to. Yeah. Former foodstuffs and adding value to them is the key theme of today. And as we have heard in previous presentations, there are various examples of former foodstuffs that in the end are used in or as feed. I won't repeat them here, but I just have a brief overview here. And if you then choose to deliver your former foodstuffs to the feed sector, I use here the example of the broken cookies that are no longer intended for human consumption anymore. And delivering the former foodstuffs to companies that produce feed has, of course, financial benefits, and also from a sustainability perspective, it helps to reduce food waste. And my main message actually of this morning is that the added value of food companies delivering to feed companies is much bigger. Because by delivering former foodstuffs to feed producing companies, you become part of the feed chain. And as such, you can play a major role in assuring feed safety and in the end, food safety. And in the next slides, I will explain that what food companies can do to play their role best. And the advices that I give is also based on the input that I received from feed companies in the market. This is to get an overview of what feed companies in our certification scheme need to do. It's a brief overview of the topics they need to handle, and I'm showing you this. I know you are not GMP+ certified, but I'm showing you this to get an understanding of what it means to act or think as a feed business operator. because you deliver former foodstuff to the feed chain, and by that you are part of the feed chain, and this might help to think in that way. I will mention a few of them. When supplying former foodstuffs to a GMP+ certified company, of course, I said that's only one of the options you can choose. You can also choose for QS certified companies or overcome. First of all, feed companies should have a feed or food safety culture. What do I mean with this? This means that feed companies must be aware that the feed that they produce will finally end up in the food chain. So their responsibility does not end when they deliver feed to farmers. Feed companies are part of the food chain, and feed companies treat former foodstuffs as valuable ingredients for feed use, as they have high nutritional value for food producing animals, like we also saw in the previous presentations. Feed companies are primarily responsible for the safety of the feed they place on the market. So this is their legal obligation. They must make sure that the former foodstuffs are suitable for use as and also in feed. So they are primarily responsible for the feed safety of the former foodstuff that you deliver to them. And key in the system that feed companies implement is the HACCP principles, also mentioned earlier in other presentations. But the HACCP principles are key to the production process. So feed companies need to know what is the production process and what are the production process steps actually? What risks are involved? And what control measures should be taken to control those risks? Where do I focus my monitoring on? This is key in the system, and the same HACCP principles must also be used when former foodstuffs are being purchased from food companies. And within a scheme, feed companies have to have the possibility to purchase former foodstuff from a non-GMP+ certified or equivalent certified supplier. And in that case, the GMP+ company acts as a gatekeeper, and he is responsible for bringing safe former foodstuffs in the GMP+ feed chain. And when doing this, the gatekeeper must comply with certain requirements. What the GMP+ company, in fact, is doing, he's doing actually a supplier evaluation based on HACCP principles. And in the end, he needs to know, because of his legal responsibility to provide safe feed, he needs to know what is the risk profile of the former foodstuff that I purchase. And when he's doing that, it can be helpful. He's making an assessment, and one of the things he has to do, he has to realize is the food company, is it certified according to a food safety scheme, which is recognized by GFSI, the Global Food Safety Initiative. If that's the case, that will give him reassurance on the high level of the food safety, and it can also have impact on the safety of the former foodstuff. If the food company is not certified according to a food safety scheme recognized by GFSI, the feed company might have to ask additional information from the food company in order to get a good view on the safety of the former foodstuffs. Also crucial in this HACCP assessment on the supplier is to have a good risk profile of the former foodstuff. And for that reason, it's useful to have a view on the HACCP plan of the food company. And this plan should include the production process of the former foodstuffs and the hazards related to the former foodstuffs that are being delivered. This information is not only important for the purchase of the former foodstuffs, but the feed company also needs this information to make a general risk assessment, and in the end, in order to get the former foodstuffs on the list of our products that are considered as safe to use in feed. And another point is that it is helpful if there is a written agreement between the feed company and the food company to arrange the roles and responsibilities with regard to the delivery of former foodstuffs and the safety aspects of that. This is in brief what topics feed companies are dealing with, and as a final slide to show with you is what food companies can actually do. We would say it all starts with awareness. Awareness that when supplying former foodstuffs to the feed market, this makes the food company part of the feed chain. And this has consequences of how you see or consider and treat former foodstuffs. It's not, like also mentioned in previous presentations, former foodstuffs are actually valuable products with high nutritional value for food producing animals. And it's not waste that should end up at the bottom of the value triangle. So feed safety culture is about actually creating a mindset among the colleagues in your companies. That's very crucial. I think that's where it all starts. And being part of the feed chain requires to take the responsibility as a feed company. This means implementing HACCP principles, not only to the foodstuffs that you produce, but also to the former foodstuff. So where in the process is it decided that the product is no longer suitable for human consumption? Is the product of vegetable or animal origin? What's the reason why the foodstuff is no longer suitable for human consumption? It makes a huge difference for feed safety when the reason is a wrong label on a product, or a broken package, or because maybe food contains salmonella. And this information of the reason why the former foodstuff is no longer suitable for human consumption is vital for the feed company to make that risk profile, to take his responsibility. Besides the reason why a former foodstuff is intended for use as feed, it's important also to know what happens with the product once it has the status of a former foodstuff. Where are the former foodstuffs collected and stored, and under which conditions? Are frozen products, are they kept in the freezer or outside? And how are the former foodstuffs transported? What risks are involved? It's very crucial to know the answers to these questions in order to deliver former foodstuffs that are indeed suitable for use as feed. And furthermore, food companies can cooperate with the feed companies by closing an agreement on the roles and responsibilities, as said earlier, and also to welcome the feed companies to perform supplier audit at their premises. So in the end, I would say as a closing remark is food companies can create added value to former foodstuff by investing in long-term relationships, having an open and transparent communication with the feed companies, and have a feed safety culture. Thank you very much.
Sorry. I know we are been running over time, but speakers are okay to still hang around for a little bit more to answer questions. I see that we have a question in the Q&A. I was maybe thinking of using that question to go back to the first two speakers of the day. The question is about collaboration. So perhaps it's something food manufacturers and retailers. Is it a point maybe first? Didier, you can speak to what more could be done when it comes to collaboration. I mean, there's business relationships going on, of course, but perhaps so pre-competitive manners as well. Should we do this more often?
I think so, and I like this question, honestly. I think my answer would be to work on overcoming the hurdle of streaming the former foodstuff to the next step, in fact. And we should not underestimate that with the best goodwill, it's somehow it might be somehow difficult for the food processor to realize what needs to be done and to take care of that. And there are different elements in that. There is an element of recognition of the value of the product and trust between the partners. It's not only that you want to get rid of that, but you want to be sure that it's not going to create trouble, so that it's going to be properly managed. That's an element. There should be also some kind of realistic dimension to that, economic dimension, I mean. If the cost of streaming to the former Foodstuff line cost you twice the cost of putting into the bin, maybe it will not happen. So that's something we need to consider, and I think it should be high in everybody's mind. There is also, and we discuss about this hygiene aspect, and I think that's very important. We are talking about operations that are very high on the hygiene dimension, but in a certain context, which is the production of food. And the hygiene context of feed is different. There are synergies, there are bridges between the two, but it's not the same stuff. And so I think if you want to be successfully transferring part of this former foodstuff to the feed, we need to manage that. It's partly done already, but probably we can do more on that. So for the bottom of the chain, the former foodstuff manufacturing or the feed companies, to take care and to realize what is feasible, what is accessible already at the food level, and what is not. So one of the big stumble, I think, would be to ask the foodstuff operator to register and to behave completely like a feed business operator. That's a big hurdle, which I think is limiting the transfer of the product. There is an interface. You can speak when someone has an ASAP for producing food. It's not so difficult to bridge and to link to that an ASAP for going to the feed. But someone has to do it, and preferably the leadership of that should be taken by the one who is going to manage the product, rather than expecting that from the former foodstuff. And maybe a last idea, maybe a bit more visibility. I think it's well known and recognized by people. Maybe some more visibility in the business environment of the food producer could make sense for the former foodstuff. I'm thinking about fairs and things like this. Honestly, I'm not in that for a long time, but I never remember having seen a former foodstuff company next to a machinery equipment supplier in one of the bakery fair. And maybe that's something that should be bear in mind in one format or another.
Thank you very much, Didier. Els, I have in mind the same question to you. Do you have a response to that as well?
Well, I can only actually repeat what Didier said. I think that's the point. It's about awareness. It's about knowledge sharing. It's about cooperation. It's what it always comes down to. And of course, this harmonization and the barriers. I mean, it has to make sense, as I said, for the retail and wholesale sector. There are many other ways to actually deal with your food waste, and to make sure that this is also one of the options. But then to make sure that it is in an efficient way, because I think we also need to understand that the retail sector, I mean, there's so many different outlets, and does it make sense to go to individual shops? There's a difference between the smaller shops, maybe the larger ones with a distribution center, where it might be more easy to actually organize that logistics. So there's a whole legal aspect, but also I think the logistical aspect that needs to be considered. But the first step is to be fully aware and to understand the options that are there, to also validate this stream. I won't call it a waste stream now, but to reduce food waste further. Thank you. Thank you,
Els. I think it's a clear learning journey, to use the right terminologies indeed, because they can be very prerogative. So maybe Valentina, I move a question to you. I was thinking maybe asking you if you, in your own experience already, come across key limiting factors or barriers that you encounter at supplier level, saying why former foods processing is not the chosen outlet.
Thank you. For sure, there's a lack of knowledge, and I'm quite proud today to have started this kicking off the barrier. at least we are all around the same webinar, and we can be in touch. And I suggest to all the auditors, and maybe if some other question should arise, to be in touch with the EFFPA Secretariat and try to find the best solution, keeping in mind there's not only one legal application at national level, we know, and it's really clear. So we need to find the best at local level, and hope to have only one legislation sooner or later. For sure, it's also the easy solution often is taken when I can try to find only one solution. It's easy, it's easier, less responsibility, keeping in mind that feed is always in the food chain, as Jaap said before, and so needs a little bit more of engagement from food business operator. We know, but it's relevant to take this challenge and always keeping the priority. So there will be no always the feed solution, the biogas solution. Thanks Didier also for arising this topic. The biofuel competition with the new legislation is an issue that maybe now is not so strong, but will become in the next months. So it's right to address this topic, but the prevention should always be in running, and also the reuse and the food donation. So we have really to cooperate together, and more communication, I think, is the first solution. So maybe we should do again. I like it today, so maybe we should meet again more often. This is my invitation. Thank you, Anton.
Thank you, Valentina. Indeed, maybe then I move to Jaap then, last questions before we wrap it up. So I think very interesting presentation as well. Also, even though it might seem like a lot of requirements coming people's way, but I hope people would be able to recognize the added value, right? So can you maybe speak to GMP Plus in this context as an enabler of this kind of business to take place, and it's not like an additional layer of additional burden. You already mentioned the recognition of food safety certification, for example, that food manufacturers are not too concerned, like, oh, here we go again, another audit coming our way. Maybe you have some practical examples.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Anton. It's indeed, and you can consider the certification scheme or others as an enabler to actually start working with former foodstuffs. The certification scheme that we provide, it's not saying if you are certified, you comply with all the legislation. No, that's not. But it definitely will enable companies to actually start working with former foodstuffs. It's a product that we very much welcome into our chain. Our companies are used to receive former foodstuffs and to make them suitable, and also to assure the safety of it. We have, as said, a gatekeeper protocol, and also we have examples in other countries like Poland, where maybe former foodstuffs is not so much a common product to use in feed, but those examples, I think, help to build best practices, and also to assure the feed market in other countries that it is very much of added value to use former foodstuffs in feed.
Thanks so much, Jaap. I see some questions came in, so I'm taking advantage of your time, knowing that we will wrap up soon. But looking at the question, maybe Valentina, I can ask this to you. I'm putting two questions together. So there's a question about how can technology like apps and platforms be effectively integrated in the process of managing and selling former foodstuffs, although it's also a question for the suppliers. Is technology indeed an enabling factor? And maybe there's an additional question, which may be a short answer, because the question is about, are the costs of plastic packages removed during the depacking process in the former food processing plant the disposal, the responsibility of former food processor, or are the costs shared between the producer and retailer? Sorry.
Thank you. The first question, for sure, we need to digitalize more, also because we will need soon also to label food and feed, also with the using traceability, using blockchain, and giving more details also to consumers. So apps and platform could be the future of the developing of this sector, even if they should not substitute completely the presence of the product, because you can write the type of the product, but maybe there are others issue and you have to see in concretely. So I think we should use to improve, but not just delegate to technology, because there's always a need of concrete presence and care on the process, even mostly at the beginning of a process. And about the cost, I think it's more an individual choice between the supplier and the former foodstuff processor. I don't think it's something we can reply as a general information. So I just reply it's an individual contractual choice between the former foodstuff processor and the food business operator. Thank you.
Thank you, Valentina. I'm looking at the other panelists. Does anybody have a quick response to that? Or I see Didier always. Yeah,
maybe on the app, I see a kind of somehow conflicting perception there, because indeed everything is going digitalized and so on. I'm not sure going to a kind of a general stock exchange of former foodstuff would be the best approach, and certainly not from the perspective of this kind of recognition and HACCP sharing and so on and so forth. It's very important that people build trust and relationship on the flow of their product. And I would feel that this kind of digitalization goes a little bit in the opposite direction. You put somewhere that you have something to sell and something is buying it. Well, looks nice, but practically, I'm not sure that's the most efficient way to do it right, to the benefit of everybody and to the benefit of safety.
Excellent. I think this will be the moment to wrap this up. We've gone a little bit over time, but I would say the quality of the discussions, the presentations was great. This is the first time that EFFPA did such a webinar. Should also remind this, actually, this webinar took place in the context of the EU Green Week, so a partner event. This is about actually building the skills for a greener economy. So hopefully EFFPA has contributed with this webinar by sharing that knowledge in spreading the knowledge about what conditions are needed. What does it take for food manufacturers and retailers to overcome that challenge? Because I think it's been presented today, there's a lot of technical requirements. The consequences of a feed safety incident are quite significant. So a key word that I also retain from the presentation is also the taking responsibilities. So I think we're all hopefully aligned on seeing feed, the use of former foodstuffs in feed as a key part of a sustainable food system. So it's taking that responsibility to enable that, but taking responsibility also means ensuring that safety always prevails. With that, I'm going to say, I'm going to first say thanks to all our speakers and their time spent on the Q&A. And I thank everybody for watching, and hopefully we'll be doing this again someday. Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye. Special thanks to Sebastian Smith that made this day happen. Thank you.
Thanks to Sebastian.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.